I'm Ryan Craig and a sharply dressed Dave Harding. And one of the reasons why, Dave, you were out there on the field. You had an awesome opportunity to MC kind of the post-game festivities. I want to ask you what it was like. You've been an all-ACC competitor here, a team captain. It's almost emotional for me because having been a graduate here. I can't imagine what it's like for you seeing this transformation take place, not only on the field, but then physically on the field. I mean, stuff's getting dug up and removed. What was it like for you to be up there on top of all that heavy equipment, talking with the athletics director and everybody else out there in the crowd?
It was pretty sweet. It was a really cool experience. It was cold, first of all, but once I got over the fear of falling off of the big bulldozer, it was a lot of fun. A great just symbol for what Duke football has done and what's going to happen in the future. And I'm just really excited to see the transformation that takes place. I really think it's just a great metaphor, so to speak, to reflect what has been going on behind closed doors in the Yo football complex and what Coach Cutcliffe has been able to do in developing this program.
You mentioned behind the doors. Well, out in front of those doors and in front of all these people, back-to-back 9-win seasons plus, still with a bowl game remaining. First time that's ever happened in program history. Maybe quickly X's and O, Dave. I know we're all kind of running around here, but what did you think was on the positive side of what Duke was doing tonight? It seemed like the offense found its rhythm for the first time in a couple games tonight.
Yeah, it was great to see Anthony Boone connecting with multiple wide receivers, Isaac Blakeney being one of them. He's a big threat. Great to utilize him, especially across the middle there, grabbing balls, getting extra yardage. One thing, though, that I like to see was the Wake Forest team was scrappy. They were good. They reminded me of Duke teams back, in 2010, 2011, and they're competitors and they're learning how to compete. And the Coach Clausen's getting them on the right track. But for Duke to be able to put together a win when not everything fell in their favor and they had to overcome some turnovers and different things early, to see that win and to see a complete team victory with special teams playing a huge factor tonight, I think it bodes well as the Blue Devils move into bowl season.
And lastly, Dave, we'll get you out on this one. There is a bowl to look ahead to. This is now something that Duke football is fairly used to. This will be the third year in a row that it's happened. Nevertheless, Dave, what is it like? Regular season behind you as a player, the next couple of weeks, there's holidays, there's exams, there's a lot going on. What is it like as a football player trying to prepare for the postseason, though you don't necessarily know where you're going or who you're going to play just yet?
Yeah, first of all, everybody's going to be watching that bowl selection process, how that pans out, especially this year. It's a lot different. You don't have, the first team going here and second place in the ACC going there. So it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic. Then from there, you go straight into preparation mode. It's a time to get your young players a chance and practice. Seniors want to go out with a win. This is a big opportunity. Every player that I've spoken to, we need to get our first bowl win here under the Cutcliffe era. It's been a long time. Things have been checked off the list. Coastal Division Championship, you name it. One thing remains, and that's a bowl win. That's going to be their primary focus, alongside of having a lot of fun during the bowl week, bowl gifts, great time with friends, and so it's an exciting time around Duke football.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with us throughout the year. Of course, we had our Blue Devil Network game day previews. Figured we'd throw a post-game one at you here now that the regular season is over. I'm Ryan Craig, and it's been a pleasure all season to be talking with this guy, one of the cornerstones for what Duke football is now and what it will become. Just phenomenal, Dave, getting a chance to talk to you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Really appreciate it, and we will have plenty more from the bowl game.
Georgia Tech did a great job of attacking the perimeter against Miami last week, and that's one thing that the Duke defensive backs are going to really have to be honed in on. Also, the defensive ends are going to have to keep contained. If you can contain that running game, slow down that second pitch in the triple option, and make them run it up the gut, I think that Duke defense is going to have a chance. With that being said, the defensive backs, defensive ends, can't get too run-oriented because Georgia Tech has a tremendous wide receiver in DeAndre Smelter. He's a senior. He has 14 passes, 339 yards. He's averaging a little bit over 24 yards a catch. Georgia Tech lulls you to sleep, and all of a sudden you've got a long bomb to DeAndre Smelter. Can get you in trouble. So Duke's going to have to.
And so I want to ask you, Dave, as a guy that was in that locker room last year as a captain, what are the conversations like among guys, national TV, arch rival?
Well, Ryan, between you and I.
Yeah, and the thousands watching out there.
Yeah.
GoDuke.com.
The guys have been keyed into this game for a long time. They know a Thursday night primetime matchup on ESPN, it doesn't get any better than this. They're excited, ready to go, and it's the 101st meeting between these two schools on the gridiron, playing for the victory bell.
what's better? And in order to make this game a meaningful one this year, they needed to win the games leading up to it. And the football team has done a good job of that week-by-week mentality. However, you have your eyes on the prize. That was for Duke getting back to bowl eligibility, making it back to Charlotte, and beating Carolina for the bragging rights around Durham. And the thing people need to realize, and a lot of Duke fans do know this, in Durham, you're brushing elbows and rubbing up against UNC fans all the time, grocery store, you name it. And so Duke football players want to have that bragging right. They know, hey, we're riding a 2-game win streak in this series. Got to keep it up.
Yeah, part of anytime you mention Virginia Tech, special teams, Beamer ball, that was the phrase that was coined right around kind of the mid and late 90s, and that figures to play a huge factor as well.
Absolutely. Beamer ball versus Cutcliffe ball is what I'm looking at this week. David Cutcliffe's team is a special teams playing team. They love it. They thrive off it. They know that it can turn a game around, and that can be the X factor. It can be an entire offensive possession, and you can score. Duke's got that taste. Ever since the Pittsburgh game, Mr. November, Devon Edwards running that back, the kickoff return back for a touchdown, it changes the game. Last week you saw the same thing. Jamison Crowder's punt return for a touchdown is what sparked the return and the surge there in the fourth quarter that Duke needed to win. And so Frank Beamer, David Cutcliffe, great friends, a lot of respect for each other. They both realize that third component of the game is important. I can't wait to see how those two units match up on Saturday.
Will, give us an idea, Dave, of what you think the most important keys to the game later tonight are going to be.
Yeah, Ryan, while bragging rights are great, this is playoff football. Duke wins the next two, they're moving on to Charlotte. In order to win tonight, it's going to take physicality up front in the line of scrimmage. That's what rivalry games boil down to so often. And in this case, it's going to be on the defensive line. Whose defense and defensive line is going to play better? Is it going to be UNC, who have been kind of porous on defense throughout the season, having as much as 70 points given up to ECU? They have a lot to prove. And then Duke's defense has been playing well as of late, but they have a big challenge going against the strength of a UNC team in Marquise Williams and Ryan Switzer, their leading receiver, Williams, their leading rusher, and obviously their starting quarterback. If you can contain Williams, defense, or the Duke defense will be okay. That's the key. And then for offense, you can't turn the ball over like we did last week. Everything that the Duke offense had done correctly and had done so well leading up to the Virginia Tech game kind of went by the wayside last Saturday. And so Duke needs to refocus, remember ball security, respecting the ball. Anthony Boone has to command that offense. Doesn't have to do anything special. Hold the ball and make plays when you have to.
Just give us your thoughts. What is a player thinking right now as you're getting ready to hit the field for the first time in the season?
Ryan, first of all, it's great to be here with you. I'm excited about the season. Home openers are all about starting an identity. What is that team, that year's team, going to be like? Who are they going to prove to be on the field during that 60 minutes of play? Last year, obviously coming off a historic 10-win season at Duke, something that people are going to look to this team to repeat or even improve upon, and that's a lot to be put on the shoulders of the team captains. And speaking with Anthony Boone and the other captains, they're excited about that challenge, and they're looking forward to this year.
What were you saying to the guys as you were getting ready to walk out on the field for game one, knowing that expectations had changed a little bit?
First games are always different. There's a lot of anxiety, so to speak. Have you prepared well enough during camp? And it's really just a chance for the seniors and the more experienced players on the team to reassure the younger guys. It's going to be all right. The coaches know what they're doing. They've been there before, and it's just going to be business as usual. You've gone through scrimmages, game-like scenarios in practice, and you're ready to play. We got some young guys filling in at different positions this year. Right tackle Casey Blazer hasn't seen much game action, and he's going to be put in there in a starting role. Guys like that are who the captains are focusing on, trying to prepare them for the season ahead.
What are some of the things that Duke's going to have to do on the field between the lines to be successful?
First of all, Elon has a very potent passing offense. Our defense is going to have to come ready to play, regardless of the opponent. First games are tough. Elon especially adds an extra dynamic and challenge in the fact that the coaching staff is new. And it's tough to get any kind of scouting report or film to study. So the coaches have had to prepare for a wide range of possibilities that they might face on the first day. So that's the first kind of challenge change X's and O's wise. Second of all is we want to see who's going to fill in the gap for linebacker Kelby Brown. Kelby, obviously an emotional leader for the team, going out in one of the scrimmages to an ACL injury. David Helton moving over to that Mike linebacker spot, key position on the defense, kind of the quarterback of the defense, and he's been excited to get that role started, and it'll be exciting to see how that linebacker Mike-Will linebacker duo does in the game.
What has his development been like? How has he gotten better as a player? Because you had a front row seat for a lot of it.
Oh, yeah. Big TC73 is what I call him. Great kid, awesome person to play next to for 2 years. And you mentioned his development. That was what has blown me away for Jacoby. He's come to work every day, gotten better. He's a guy that's got a great attention to detail. And the thing that sets him apart at that left tackle position is his pass blocking ability. Jacoby has great feet. Now, when I talk about great feet, he's got an ability to jump back off the line of scrimmage on the snap and cut off the defensive end, whether they're speed rushing or bull rushing inside. He's got a great ability to kind of adjust to whatever the defensive lineman brings to him. Struggled with that a little bit early. I remember he got his first start against Georgia Tech a couple years ago. It was tough, kind of trial by fire for him, but he's turned into one of the most dominant pass protectors in the ACC and is doing a great job, rightfully named the Offensive Lineman of the Week last week.
Yeah, tremendous. Give us an assessment of what you see Duke offense versus Miami defense.
First thing I noticed is the defensive line play. Those guys are big, 300-pound range. I mentioned against Kansas that Duke was going to be playing a 3-down defense. Similar can be said here against Miami. Miami will shift around a little bit. They've got the athletes to be able to jump into different defensive formations, but Duke, having seen the odd defense before, they're prepared for that. One thing that the defensive line does well is hat read. What that means is they'll kind of post up on the opposing offensive line, hold their ground a little bit, not really looking at pushing back, getting into the backfield. They just kind of stand there. That allows them to see which way the ball is going to go, jump off the block, and make the tackle. Also gives the linebackers a two-way go, gives them the ability to kind of be more active in the backfield, keeping offensive linemen on the line of scrimmage, not getting that vertical push, which is so important and can be detrimental to a linebacker's play. Then in the defensive backfield, one thing that I've noticed, great speed, great talent back there. Obviously, it's the U. They recruit well. But they've made some key mistakes. I was watching the Nebraska film, key mistakes in the backfield that allowed for big plays against them. So if they tighten some things down going into this week, mistakes should be ironed out a little bit. So it's going to be tough for the Blue Devils to move the ball.
Great read. Perhaps on the way. This used to be an offensive lineman's dream. Take me back to those days, Dave. Not going to be a lot of throwing the ball probably in that kind of weather. It's all about the trenches.
You're right. Now that I'm a member of the media, I guess I can bundle up with a coat and not have to worry about it. Offensive linemen like to set a tone, make it look like they're mean and nasty, and so you always hated to be the guy that was afraid of the cold and forced to really wear no sleeves and go out there and bear it all. So it's always fun in the trenches. The hitting kind of stings a little bit more, and you live for that kind of stuff if you're a big guy up front. But with the skill positions, handling the ball gets tough. Even at center position, your hands can get a little bit numb, ball's a little bit harder, and it can make exchanges difficult. And so both teams are going to need to look to really handle the ball well, protect the ball, and really just execute the way they've been doing in practice all week.
Let's get into similarly on these kinds of days. James Conner, not a normal guy.
The Duke defense is going to have to live for this. They got to love it, love that sting, love the pop. Coach Cutcliffe on Tuesday said that this is the most physical team they've seen to date. So it's a big challenge for them. Last week or 2 weeks ago, talking about Virginia, that was supposed to be the big team, the big physical team. Believe it or not, Pittsburgh is even more physical. You look across their offense, a fullback at 6'2", 270, wide receiver 6'2", 190, 6'2", 220. One of those huge wide receivers is sophomore Tyler Boyd. Last year, he had 154 yards and 3 touchdowns against us. So it'll be interesting to see how they work Boyd, a very talented playmaker, into the game plan. You mentioned James Conner. He's at 6'2", 250, has reached a 1,000-yard mark already in 8 games this season, something that is really unheard of when you think about just the college football world in general. Offensive linemen all around 6'6", some of the guys as heavy as 335 pounds, Ryan. Crazy big. So the Duke D-line is going to have to really firm up in there, demand double teams, to free up the defensive backs in the secondary. David Helton, Jeremy Cash are going to have big games. And I think one of the forgotten things so far about this Duke defense that has made them successful has been their ability to wrap up and bring offensive players down on first contact. Now, in years past, you've seen Duke teams have to kind of tackle by committee. And this year, first contact, maybe second contact, they're bringing them down no yards after contact, and that's been big in stopping and getting offenses off the field. This week is going to be a very big challenge with a huge offensive front, big offensive skill position guys. Duke's going to have to either get players down or have everybody meet them there and tackle by committee.
It's a blue. What is that like trying to prepare for that time?
12:30, not my favorite time to play as a player. I was a 3:30 kind of guy, got to sleep in a little bit, have some breakfast, and then even get a lunch meal as an offensive lineman. That was always a concern of mine. 12:30 game, though, Blue Devils are going to have to wake up and be ready to play. Meetings will be taken care of Friday night, and so Saturday they know they wake up, it's game time. And it is a little bit of an adjustment for young guys like Sean Wilson, mentioned him earlier. He has never been through a 12:30 game, and it's good experience because with TV the way it is now, they're bound to have some more noon games and 12:30 kicks as the season progresses.
Yeah, you mentioned case they'll have a former defensive tackle playing right tackle today.
Yeah, that's a very tough transition. I don't care who you are, how athletic you are, what you've been doing prior to that change, it's tough. And much like Syracuse was last week, Virginia Tech has been a victim of the injury bug this year. And you saw how, although a team may be battered and bruised, they can still compete. I expect the same thing out of Virginia Tech this week. An injured animal, I've having traveled to Ethiopia with the offensive line and being to Africa, you don't mess with a wounded animal. And in this case, Virginia Tech is still very much in the fight, in the game, looking for revenge. They know that they're beat up. The guys that are having to play, you got to fill rank and keep marching, and it's a tough thing to do. Even myself, I played a few years ago. Brian Moore, our starting center, goes down with a broken arm in preseason camp. I had never played center before, but just moving from the guard position over to center to patch that up was tough for me. I can't imagine switching from D-line to starting on the offensive line in a tough ACC matchup. It's definitely tough, but the players, I think, a Frank Beamer coach team has a mentality. It really boils down to mentality of who's going to be tough, who's going to come out loving the game of football, playing, doing whatever they have to do for their team to get a win. And I expect the Virginia Tech players, who are coached by one of the best, to be ready for the challenge.
Virginia Tech has a couple of fantastic defensive ends you played against. They're going to have to be good again.
You're right. Anytime Bud Foster's defense goes anywhere, this guy's watching. I am a big fan of what he does. He's a defensive coordinator over there. A lot of people will remember what Virginia Tech did earlier in the season, going to Ohio State, coming out with a win against a very talented team there on the road in a very hostile environment. And a lot of that can be attributed to the defense for the Hokies. Every year, it's going to be a dogfight. Bud Foster has extreme confidence in his players. By that, I mean that he's willing to put his defensive backs on islands on the outside and say, hey, we're loading the box. We're going to try to stop the run. We don't care about anything else. We're stopping the run, and our guys on the outside are going to keep your wide receivers from making an impact. It's a challenge, and Duke's offensive players have to be ready for that challenge. Look forward to it. I know they did last year. This year is not going to be any different. I think what the key for the Duke's offense this week, though, is to do what they've been doing. Don't change up your playbook because you're going against somebody that likes to load the box. Keep trying to run the ball. Even though you might be getting 1 or 2 yards carry, the potential to break a long run is there. And that's a lot of what has hurt Virginia Tech's defense so far, is the long runs. Teams have been able to get through a little bit of a beat-up interior of the defensive line, losing all-ACC player Luther Maddie a few weeks ago. Once you crack through that and they've loaded the box, you can take a few to the house, which happened